So hello to everyone. We're very happy to have you here today. We have a short hour to discuss a subject that really merits a lot of reflection, a lot of debate, and we're going to try to answer a lot of the questions with this panel that I'm going to introduce here today. We're going to talk about the high fashion or the ready-to-wear for cyber. This is what the NC director said at the last INCYBER forum last year. He said the democratization of cybersecurity, in particular with regard to the small and medium-sized enterprises, is critical, especially since they are really threatened by all kinds of risks of attacks, and they don't always have the skills and expertise necessary. So it's very important that we respond to that need by offering solutions that are affordable to enforce the security of SMEs and by filling in that lack of expertise that SMEs might not have in cybersecurity. So when we talk about ready-to-wear, we're talking about helping SMEs through their activities online and coming up with concrete solutions that we can put into place to fight against phishing and other illicit activities. Is it possible to create a CSR for a corporate social responsibility system for cybersecurity for all users? Now, cybersecurity is something to be adapted to a particular environment, particular job sectors, professional sectors. It needs to be designed with a certain level of know-how that's quite high. Quite often there's not enough regulations, and we'll talk about that later. And obviously, these things cost money, and made-to-measure security is higher cost. Now, ready-to-wear, or as we say, sort of like off-the-shelf solutions cost less and allow us to cover masses, threats that hit the mass, and now without knowing the specifics of the customers, we can come up with a broad coverage for cybersecurity that costs less and is therefore more effective for their needs. So we're going to address these questions. And we're very lucky to have a very broad panel here today because you'll see that each of their areas of expertise is quite complementary and be very interesting. Madame Deluc, welcome, and thank you for accepting your invitation. You're specialized in training and you're director of Clusive. So tell me if I'm wrong, but this is a association for the promotion of cybersecurity, and you have recognized by you're also a member of the board of directors of the AFNOR. Excuse me, for cyber malveillance for the AFNOR. Excuse me, I only got half of that right. And so for the HNDN, you're also participating in that initiative, and you wrote the preface for a work called SMEs: The Forgotten Part of Cybersecurity. So obviously the major players have big needs. François Lerec, Track Solutions, hello. So it's 25 years that you've been working as a consultant, and you are one of the more experienced publishers in the ISO 27000 standard. You're specialized in helping enterprises get certification. There's a whole series of certificates, and you help your customers with an ecosystem of 35 experts. Now, the subject of compliance, I'm sure, is part of your DNA, and we'll talk about that later, because compliance is not always an element of agility. Laurent Petier, since 2023, you are with Everial. You are part of the PS2D2 group, and you're in the Rhône-Alpes region, where you work with raising awareness and education in cybersecurity for SMEs. Sebastian Vieux, everybody knows who you are. You're from Storm Shield. You have more than 20 years of experience in cybersecurity. You were with integrators, operators, and consulting companies, and you've worked also for critical infrastructure enterprises, as well as a number of SMEs. You're also with StanShield. You're also, Storm Shield. You are also developing a number of products that improve the levels of trust and confidence with your customers. TR15, you are the adjunct director at the INCYBER since 2021. You are also the subdirector of the Anti-Corruption Agency, head of the Department of the Control of Economic Actors and Expertise in the DG for at BERC. Did I get that all right? No, I'm no longer an adjunct director for the last few months. All right. We have a panel that is with a number of experts. They're engaged in raising awareness. We have an actor from the NC. We have a French manufacturer. And I'm going to start with Lumina. In the conditions for ready-to-wear cyber security versus made-to-measure cybersecurity, what can you say about the different levels of organization? And you who are working about and raising awareness about these issues, what do you think? Well, hello to everyone. So, raising awareness, how can I say it? It's really, it's not that the human beings are the weak link, it's that really the knowledge, the awareness, that's the weak link. So when you look at the training sessions that we do today, when we look at the people who enter into a company, they respond to a certain number of constraints or injunctions or instructions from their hierarchy. They also have to, let's say if they have to click on a link and open an invoice or to look at a PDF with a CV from a potential hire. Maybe we need to have a different type of education or efforts to raise awareness compared to people who are maybe at different functions. It's not a question of being like poorly prepared, but let's say when you go home after having tried to make people more aware of the risks, do you think to yourself, have I made them really ready for what's out there? When you look at heads of SMEs who come out of a conference and they were aware that they have a risk, that they're facing a threat in terms of cybersecurity, but when they go back to their office or back home or talk with their suppliers, do they manage that risk properly? Do they do their daily risk analysis? And in cybersecurity, quite often they come and see us, or when there's a leak of data, when the media talks about that, when you talk about best practices, quite often we have to give refreshers or reminders of what to do. I know we have certain good students, employees who open all the emails and they have to open all of the links to recruit the right people or to pay the invoices that they receive. But they do it right. They do it in a secure way. But then you have bad students where sometimes if they get an SMS, or they and they, when you test them, they won't click on the phishing link when they're being tested. But then when they're in their daily life, they do all the bad habits, all the wrong things. And so it's very hard. It's very hard to raise awareness. Quite often, we don't tell people they're stupid for clicking on a risky link or a risky message. The real message is that we're all vulnerable. It's not that you're stupid. It's that we're all at risk. For example, and when you're in a daily life, you may be going through troubles in your marriage, maybe your children are having trouble at school, etc. And all of a sudden somebody sends you a thing and you don't think that a link might be dangerous. So it's important that we think about it. We have to have it at the front of our mind. So there's a lot of things that we have to relativize, and you have to accept this risk and not condemn or blame the person who might click on the bad CV because, by definition, you can't know who's sending it, obviously. Yes, it's true. It's important not to. It's not important a question of pointing the finger, but it's also important to raise awareness to show that people maybe have done something wrong, so that other people can learn from that mistakes. Yes, it's true. But if we want to raise the awareness among everybody, when we talk about cybersecurity as something that's of interest to everyone, it's important that everyone, all employees, all citizens, understand the risk, accept the risk, accept that they are vulnerable, and even if it's not a solution. If there's also a magic bullet out there. So what about social engineering? Sébastien, for example, in preparing a question, to go maybe a little bit further, we created IT to simplify life of people. But let's just keep things in the professional sphere. Of employees, for example. Here we're talking about the human being as the weak link. Well, I hate to say it, but in a company, the human being is actually an asset. It's not the weak link. They're the ones who make the money. So the asset has vulnerabilities, of course, and that's something that Lumina just said very well just now. So from my point of view, it's our role as experts, everybody here in this forum, we are here on the stage, it's up to us to propose to our team members, our employees, an environment where we protect them. Let me give you an example of giving you this sort of idea of a shot, of a jab, that sort of updates your tetanus shot. It's like reminding people. So, for example, to avoid phishing, it's up to get the. It's not up to the nurse to understand IT in order to. It's up to everyone to understand. So do you look at this as sort of curative, or no? It's not. It's a tool. It's a tool. We give people a tool, and some people. Then the idea is to simplify their job. A nurse, for example, their job is not to do IT. Their job is to help take care of people's health. Okay, so the transformation of information is something that's very important, and technology will continue to play an important role to allow users to continue to do their job in full security to the extent possible. So, Sébastien. Laurent, excuse me, I had a question for Laurent. Through your association, how do you raise awareness among your people? There's an interesting point that Lumina and Sébastien raises, that raising awareness is something that if we don't really apply it to a particular job, a particular task, it really won't mean anything. I mean, if you talk about just cybersecurity in general, they're not going to understand, it will mean nothing. Is that the right way to explain things, is putting on a room and talk to them for 2 hours about things that don't really speak to them? Now, today, the people in front of me, I raise their awareness. Now, when you say we have to protect their company, they really don't care. It's not their job to protect to their company. So there you have to really talk about their life in the company, their daily job, to make sure, do I have people who are there to make sure that things go well, that there's no problems? I'm people who are there to correct problems if something happened, or if we detected a threat, or now in the everyday life, what works is to explain to people. I remember people who got who suffered attacks on their email accounts. They were victims of identity theft. And they go to their banks and they realize that somebody else used their identity to take out a loan, and they go well, I didn't take out that loan, somebody else did it. Well, once that happens to them, then they become aware of the impact of digital cybersecurity threats. Quite often, I take walks out in the country, and I learned through that you don't put your tent at the bottom of a cliff, because you can have rocks that fall, and so you end up having these sort of good reflexes, these best practices. Now, when you talk about a nurse, for example, who is there to give you a jab, and she's not there to be a specialist in IT and protect her practice from cyber threats. She's there to just give you a jab, and so she doesn't have to be an IT specialist, but she has to be sufficiently aware to detect certain risks. And you say that the human being is not the weak link, but a cyber attack is really an attack against an entire environment, and the final user is the person who can maybe protect against the system. Human beings maybe not the weakest link, but it is a human being who is at the end of the day who's able to maybe prevent the attack from succeeding. If a human being wasn't important in this trajectory, you wouldn't be sending an email. You wouldn't be doing phishing. So regardless of how you look at it, yes, the human being could be a weak link, could be an element to save the day, could be an element to sink the ship. So when you look at technology and awareness, it's really two sides of the same coin. Yes, you can't separate them. Yes, the human attacks and the human defends. So if you say that it's always going to be a human being that's going to generate something, whether if they use technological means to do it, technology is an incredible vector for creating phishing. Doing phishing in Japanese in the old days was very, very difficult, but now AI allows you to do phishing in any language you want. So human beings are there to protect themselves and defend themselves, and if we explain to them that they have to do it, they can do it. Laurel. 90% of attacks succeed thanks to human error. So social engineering really is the final mesh, the final link. Yeah, I'd say 99% of attacks that succeed are resulting to human error. Now, we have to also look at all the attacks that are prevented thanks to human activity, thanks to proper awareness, proper actions to prevent the threat. What interests us is that security is something we always look at it like an onion. There's multiple layers. If one layer fails, it's not necessarily the end of the world because there's other layers. And so all of our work for RSSI is to I'm sure we all do risk analysis, but if this defense falls, what is the next defense that needs to be put into place to protect the system? So if we raise awareness of employees, for example, and we say that regardless of what happens, it's always going to be you the problem, they'll never get it right. So it's a type of information. Yes, I think we all have kids. When you explain to kids that they're not good kids, that they're going to continue to do it. But if we go further and give them values and show what they do well and how doing well is better than doing something that's wrong, then they learn. Sébastien, in the preparation of our discussions, we talked about pragmatism. You talked about a lot of pragmatism in implementing actions that are simple and practical. Now, pragmatism is maybe not what we call the sort of the made-to-measure, the tailored solutions compared to the ready-ware solution. It's amusing. You said what? What was your question again? Is pragmatism not high tailoring, the high street tailoring versus ready to wear? Ready to wear sort of fixed, whereas, no, I got to tell you, when I go to McDonald's, it's always going to be the same hamburger, no matter which McDonald's I go into. Whereas if I go into a different restaurant or, in this place or in another place, it's always going to be different. Well, is the recipe changing maybe without you knowing it? Well, that's my question. You're also talking about repeating, the same thing over and over. And your final word you said also exposure. Okay, yeah, I'm going to take an example that's quite simple. An example, something happened to me recently. Look, I have a new encryption algorithm I just invented. It's great. It's much easier than the rest, and it's really fantastic. So he came to me and proposed a sort of made-to-measure solution that had never been repeated, and it's not at all fixed. And it's interesting because the NC just next to me says, you use the SPDCR. It's something that's been fixed for 15 years, and it's repeated for thousands of years. So in our profession, this idea of being fixed or being, flexible or made to measure or never repeated. Well, repeatability is something for me that's a guarantee that it works. It's a guarantee that it's reliable. It's robust. So in our sector, it's not that that means that you can't have adaptive systems. You could have, for example, a detection engine which is very efficient and repeatable, but is but continues to be sort of improved through continuous improvement, and that's sort of like ready to wear. It's somebody else that's feeding your engine, but that's experts. But would you prefer to buy a car that's built by someone in their garage from a kit made out of wood, or would you prefer to go to Renault or Peugeot, where all the factories are putting out the same car every day for years? And I think you'd have much more trust in a car that's like built on a production line than some guy building it in his garage. So you have this notion of collecting past experience. We talked about mining, where we talk about ready to wear. You really are improving your mass market solution, but you continue to improve the quality. Well, we can't all afford this sort of high street tailored solutions. Are you talking about ready-to-wear or high tailoring when you're talking about cost? He said that the ready-to-wear is something that a lot of people can't afford. And he's asking the question, are you sure you meant to say ready-to-wear? It's much more expensive. Yeah, a mass market bike, for example, is a lot cheaper, but it's made usually much better. Ready to wear is often better. Of course, you have to have a nuance. There are particular cases where maybe ready to wear is not ready for your particular needs. You might need to have something that's like made to measure for your particular case. But that's rare. That's rare. It remains. I think that in the majority of cases, the ready-to-wear is sufficient, with a little bit of adaptation. For example, you want to do the cuffs on your pants a little higher, a little lower, and then your ready-to-wear is ready to go. Well, whether you're doing high street tailoring or ready-to-wear, what changes inside is like the settings, the adjustments. And that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about pragmatism. It's the differentiating is how it's put into use. Yes, absolutely. And the product that your SME has, for example, if a firm of lawyers, for example, you have the big banks, you have defense agencies. Now, all of those, for example, they can integrate the same firmware that I use. I integrate them into my firmware, and in terms of robustness, in terms of intelligence, I do this to the big and the small clients, and this is again going back to the issue of raising awareness. Your job is to be a lawyer or a nurse or a dentist or a doctor. Our mission as a company is to protect everyone. I think there's a lot of lawyers in the room. We have to be careful what we say. Francois, you work on governance in terms of the rules of art. How do you put the human being within these systems and in your rules for governance and compliance? Well, the human factor is very important. The corporate culture of a company, everything that you've been saying here today, and the efficiency of different solutions for cybersecurity really makes sense when people understand them. When you have different populations, when you take, for example, small and medium-sized companies, you have CEOs. They have to manage a lot of different things at the same time. As cybersecurity might be among the things that the head of a small company might have to deal with. So what we recommend companies do quite often to fortify their situations, quite often the markets impose these solutions on us and on everyone, but so sometimes we're obliged to do it, or we go there by vocation. But the idea is to find the right governance for cybersecurity. It's very important to give meaning to a small to medium-sized company is going to have a difficult time paying for a made-to-measure solution. So it's important that the company understand their risk and not make a mistake about their risk analysis, because if they understand their situation, then they can get a ready-to-wear solution. They can get the right technology. And they know that if they appropriate that technology and take those decisions, then they can manage it properly. So how do you accompany them in concrete terms? Well, in concrete terms, we sort of do a state of play. We sort of look at their situation very quickly, please. We do and analyze their situation without being exhaustive, and we say, look at everything that you do in terms of security, even if you don't think that it needs certification or not. I mean, but you need to do security today. You all have to do what you can to not be vulnerable. You have to look at what exists. We look at what works, what doesn't work, and then we try to adapt it by confronting it with a whole framework of things that allow them to be as homogeneous as possible. We look at security based on certain objectives. Will always be more efficient if you have a sort of homogeneous approach. If you, for example, have a fort, it's protected only on 3 sides. Well, it's not gonna be very secure. If there's one weak side, you're vulnerable. So you have to look at something that makes sense for the people. At a certain point, the head of the company knows what works for his company or her company, and they know how they're exposed in terms of cyber threats. So we only do made to measure, but it could. But to make sure that companies can afford it, we do really sort of surgical strikes. We do very precise solutions. We accompany them over time, but we transform them, their solutions, and develop them when it's needed, rather than giving them sort of like a long-run accompaniment with very, very high costs. We really dose it. It's really more a question of coaching and partnership, where they have the most real control, and they call us when they need us. And so when they're mature, then they take over their solution and run it themselves. And they, get their in-houses or find their solutions when needed. So what you're saying is that you have solutions that every company is different, but we have experts that have a proven track record and that allows our customers to go faster with regard to their needs, and we look at the characteristics of the security initiatives that need to be put in place. They might have very specific threats, very specific risks. So once we're able to show what their situation is, then we can see whether they can do something that's ready to wear or tailored, and that they know what they need, why they need it, and how to manage their risks. Gaetan, do you need to have a lot of security experts? I retain that phrase. You talked about that you don't need a lot of experts, but when you look at the international market, are the Americans really all that strong? Are they ahead of us? Or when you look at ready-to-wear solutions? Well, I think European actors can do ready-to-wear as well as tailored solutions as good or better than what's anywhere else in the world. But when we have to acquire a solution, do we want to buy a name, or do we want to pay for a name, or do we want to pay for something that actually works for us? And in cybersecurity, or for any risk for that matter, the name is good, the brand is always nice, but you don't necessarily need to have Gucci. Sometimes, made bespoke works really well. The name of a high street bespoke tailor might not be as well known, but as Gucci. But so the point is, you're not buying the name. Really, you have to buy something that really works well. One big secret that we have at our agency, in fact, it's so secret that it's now public. When you look at the name of the service providers that we certify and that we qualify by our agency, and solutions that are available through the agency, they're not a lot of big names. We don't have a lot of big names. Now, if you find it but if they're on that list, that means they're not bad. They're good. They're good. They're very good even. So I'm going to. How do we recommend solutions that are require huge means or resources, or do you recommend tailored solutions or ready to wear? Well, I got to say that buying something that's ready to wear that's not useful, or even something that's tailored that's not useful, buying a short in the winter doesn't serve any purpose, even if it's a Gucci. So you have to do a proper risk analysis. The risk analysis is really something that has to be done in a tailored way, because we all work in different sectors, and we all have our own characteristics, our own specifications. So the big job here is to understand this culture of the SME that are, all the companies that are not yet today, big players, now they have their role to play. And so when you have somebody in SME who's interested in cybersecurity and is interested in whether to get something that's ready to wear or something that's tailored, then they already know that they need to buy some clothes. They know that the king is not wearing any clothes, so it's important to choose the proper clothes. You have to get dressed. You have to get dressed for winter, and you have to, if it's winter, and you have to dress for summer when it's the summer, and you have to adapt to the season. You have to adapt to the risk, and that's the real point of the subject. So when we're talking about different sectors, we're talking about lawyers, for example. Yeah, for encryption and things like that is important for lawyers, but not everybody has confidential data. There might be companies that hire lots of people who are in the field who don't have the same needs as someone who's in an office behind a computer and manages figures that are very, very confidential or sensitive. Well, if you have to provide a tap for the nuclear facility right next door, yes, you have to know what you're doing and what your risks are. And companies and their leaders have to understand what they need are. And of course, these SMEs often don't have a dedicated staff. They often don't even have a single expert in their company for cyber. And so now, of course, there's a lot of structures that are being created, to respond to this need. There's a good movement in place. But having said that, things have to enter into the mindset. Now, were lots of us to do conferences and a lot of efforts to raise awareness. A lot of the different sectors and professions are moving in this direction, but we have to adopt this on a daily basis. When you enter into a company, you have to understand that what's being done is at the right place at the right time and be positive to really raise awareness in a positive sense for the company, and not just say that the simplest thing to do is to be as accessible as possible. I think she means financially, that things have to be as cheap as possible. For example, an auditor has one idea, the accountant firm might have another idea. Everybody has their own idea of what their needs are, and I think it's not like a head of a company has to find the same solution that worked at somebody else's in somebody else's sector. You have to really have an analysis, and you have to look at this as something as a plus and not as just a cost. It's like people who lay, used to be laying cables, these IT professionals who used to be laying cables, and now they're specialists in cybersecurity. This is kind of the question I'm asking you. Are these opportunists who are like creating mass market solutions, but are not really they're not real experts. They what electricians did 20 years ago and what they're being done now as IT professionals is completely different. So when you look at the marketing, things are often very well presented, but these remain products that have different levels of efficiency, and it's one thing in theory, it's another thing in practice.
Un petit sujet, c'est que.
But this is one of the major topics when we're talking about the risk analysis. You might buy some services. It's very easy to find some, but if you're buying services or tools that do not serve any purposes, there's no point of doing so. So, for example, at Crisif, we had a risk analysis expert that came to the SME. Some e-company decided to invest on the topic. They hired someone, and after a month and a half, they told him, we've only had incidents since you've had. No, that's not true. That's just now you see that there are incidents happening. So you have to understand also what these solutions bring to the table. It's a lot of work, and I know it takes time. It's not easy. And when we're talking about the big problem that we were seeing with big groups, and people would saying, it will never happen to me, for example, with ransomwares. Well, now this network is also something that is happening to other people, to the SMEs. So we were talking about haute couture, and let's please not forget that this is the topic of the day. So we were trying to find, with the five of you, how to explain to the audience what the process is in order to create something that is more bespoke, more ready to use than really haute couture. So I've heard from Sebastian that it's just about the use case. It could be one or the other. It could be the same that happens with hamburgers, for example. And we've also heard about awareness raising, that is paramount. I've heard the question of governance and regulations, policies that might not be very flexible, and the regulation authorities from ANSI that are telling us that they have a lot of references that might be used or targeted for SMEs and MSMEs, because with the new directives they will have to abide by certain regulations in terms of cybersecurity. So it's great for national resilience, but it will be difficult for these small structures to implement such security measures. So how do you reassure these organizations that are small organizations? We're talking about a small organization that do not have experts in risk analysis. How do they find a partner to help them out? How can you really convey the message to these small operators? It is not compulsory to have an expert in risk analysis. Are we talking about one expert, or maybe having the entirety of your team being trained and aware of the question of security? I think it's easier to do in a small group, in a small company, because in SME it is easy to meet with everyone and talk about the risk of cybersecurity. So it's about company culture too. We should improve the resilience of the structure through training, through awareness trainings. We are in a culture now where it is possible to use the human factor. We're talking collaborators, people that we are meeting every day. We spend 8 hours a day with them, and we are talking SMEs, so there are interactions. So in SMEs, that's the difference with big groups, and when you have major groups that work and deal with the time differences and so on, it's much more difficult. But when you are in an SME, you don't need an expert in cybersecurity. It should be spread out to the entire staff. And the same goes for the tools. You have to understand what you are trying to protect within your structure to build this resilience. And if the day you are the better placed to know exactly what you need. And there are people that have been spending a lot of time in the company and that were able to work before the digital era. Well, this is the same now. We have to give value to these people. I hear what you're saying. So we need a bespoke solution rather than a ready-to-wear solution. Laurent, you said that we need to focus on the targets and mitigate the risks rather than implementing methodologies of information. So this is the pragmatic approach, really, that goes against maybe the control system, but might not be adequate for business operations. So how do you make sense of that in an operational level in terms of the resources that are allotted? Is it not contradictory to the recommendations we've heard from the authorities in Nancy? I think that in ANSI they are targeting their messages to experts in groups, and now you're talking about groups that might not have experts. So isn't it contradictory with the common recommendations? So as I was saying, I'm quite pragmatic when I talk about this topic. When I talk to SME CEOs or other companies that might not be as big as others, if these people are young, they've at least had 2 hours of training during the studies in terms of cyber threats. If you're more than 50, you've never heard of it. And then they see us coming, telling them there's a risk, there's a threat, but now you have to cover for it. There's a real threat for the sustainability of your company. And so, for example, I went to L'Oréal in June and gave my first budget, and my boss did not understand that it was a real project, that cybersecurity is something that has to be done all along the company's life. We will have projects within a cybersecurity project, risk analysis is very important to understand exactly what we want to do to protect ourselves, on what we set the priority. We will try to implement measures to get protection, but this will lead to project, but it means also that in the years to come, you will have other projects to be implemented in terms of cybersecurity. So, for example, you will identify incidents, you will focus on these incidents, and then you will continue working. So a risk analysis is just a tool that you are using to set up your budget and justify your budget to the finance teams. Now, CEOs now start to understand the importance of such topics. They understand that by investing on cybersecurity, they can ensure that awareness raising is used. This is maybe the first lever we should use. It doesn't take much time or much resources, and you quite quickly measure the results. And it's very efficient to start with awareness raising. It is, honestly. When you don't have any measures, no policies, and you don't have the means, well, raising awareness is something you can do by yourself. You know people when you are in an SME. You can discuss with them. You can explain exactly what are their difficulties, what are their roles. Now, when we talk about the RSSI expert, I think they are crucial. You need someone to pilot the project. You need someone to have a transversal approach, someone who sees the different topics, the different departments of the company, someone who will be able to talk to the experts afterwards, because of course at some point there are a lack of knowledge within the company, so you need to call upon the service providers, such as Sebastian. If we're talking about firewalling, I will have a technical discourse in front of me, so I have to be able to understand that, and then also to be able to discuss with the company level. I'm not saying that you do not need an expert in IT and cybersecurity, but what I'm telling you is that some companies can live without it by just outsourcing cybersecurity. It is great to have an expert within the company, but it's not compulsory. As of today, of course, this is not compulsory, but I think you need someone to be able to take the lead in these projects. I do agree. Anyway, when I talk to my manager, and this is very important, what they're asking, what they expect from me, and we did a risk analysis, and we decided what are the major risks and what we have to protect ourselves from. And they expect results in terms of protection. It doesn't mean that there won't be any incidents, because this is not possible in reality. But they expect for me to offer readiness in case of incidents. Now, you were talking, François, about everything that is linked with compliance. I think this is very interesting. As an expert in cybersecurity, when I go to a company, I'm just there for a short period of time. So it's very important to have compliance rules that are already written. Maybe not everyone knows the rules, but that's another issue. There's a question of communication and training. But if you set compliance rules, it's a basis for our work. I can base my work on these rules, and I always think that as a RSSI, I'm just in the company for a short time. So you're telling us that using the references is very important, and having a regulation is very interesting also for SMEs. Yes, indeed, and I'm not trying to praise ANSI here. But the thing is, when you don't know where to start, what they've written is a great basis for your work. Then when you expand your size, there are other frameworks you can base your work on. And this will adapt it to the different functions of the company, to the shareholders, and so on. And at the end of the day, the basic minimum, I would say, for companies that might face a cyber threat. I'm not sure that all companies have a major cyber threat, but there's companies that do have a cyber threat. They have the possibility to use these documents on which they can base their work. I must say that every company is doing some cybersecurity at some point, but you just have to base them on some recommendations or a framework. Gaëtan, do you want to add something on this aspect? So I will just remember from that what we are writing is very useful. So great. It's surprising but great. Sebastian, you've told us that it's very important to get support. It doesn't mean that you should not develop yourself, and because when you become autonomous, it's always better. But at the end of the day, you say that cybersecurity, while outsourcing, can be useful. But this support it represents a cost, of course, accounts for a lot of money. So how can you convince a company to get support from an external actor instead of doing themselves? You mean? No, yes, I'm talking of a situation where a company does not have the skills to cybersecurity. So how do you find the budget? How do you convince them to outsource this work? Well, if they know that they have to do something, whether they are trying to recruit someone. Now, I'm talking about SMEs. They've been working for 20 years. They've never done any cybersecurity. And so they need external support, but they need to find budget. So how do you explain to your CEO, in terms of return on investment, how do you convince your CEO that you need this budget while it has never been done in the past? I'll bet upon what my colleagues have said. If it has to come from the IT expert, it's an issue. It should come from the CEO. The CEO is in charge of all the risks and threats that your company is confronted with. We're talking about data leaks and so on. So there's a real risk in cybersecurity. So when we're talking about an IT expert, do you think that they do not have the possibility to say that at some point they need to do risk analysis and cyber threat management? Yes, they can do that, but it should come from the higher level. So my question is, you have to convince your CEO. How do you do that? I have an issue with that. I'm pretty sure that all CEOs, if they read the press, if they talk with the other people, they know that there's a cyber threat now. It's nothing new. Everybody is aware of that. The question is about the budget. You have set a budget for cybersecurity, but what do you do with this budget? That's a real question. We know that bespoke solutions, well, to do so, you have to recruit an expert. I'm sorry, they won't be able. It costs too much. It is too expensive. Nobody will want to work for them because it's not interesting enough for an expert in cybersecurity to work for a small enterprise. So they will have to outsource the work. So at the local level, the IT expert is just in charge of the daily activities, and then the cybersecurity will be outsourced. So what you're saying is that the partners who are selling network infrastructures and so on are also interested in selling cybersecurity systems. You've all said that you know all the challenges of a company and that a service provider might not have. No, I'm sorry, but the challenge is not to be limited to this circle of experts. We are not the only one who can do something about it. Security should be security by design. When we're talking about a service provider, when they were installing Windows in the past, in the future they will have to make sure that the systems are secure. It's part of the liability of such a installer. So I'm sorry, but it shouldn't be limited to a small group of experts. And in SMEs, you will learn from this knowledge. We've all grown and we've all used this new knowledge of cybersecurity, and this is something that will come from the different service providers, and that's how we will fight against cyber attackers. Because let's be honest, they are industrialized. They have ready to use tools in cyber attack. You said that it is important to know the threat in order to be able to exactly identify the solution you need. So how can you detect and identify the threat? So just to start, I would say that you have to go through risk analysis and better understand the agency risk. We've published a panorama for SMEs. It's quite simple. It's often opportunistic threats. State threats are more for big companies, administration authorities, It doesn't mean that you might not be targeted, but if you are targeted by such a threat, you're supposed to know that you're targeted. It means that you know that you're working with something very sensitive. So the real risk is mass cybercrime. People that do not even develop their own malware, they just buy it on the dark web, and you can rent it also. You have ransomware as a service, you just pay a few dollars a month, and then you have access to this malware that are available on the dark web. So no, the threat, you don't need to do much about that. So I think the issue is really opportunistic threat, and how can you deal with that? So you just avoid to be caught. Is that it? Now we're talking about the definition of opportunistic market, and the people who say that they can do bespoke and also haute couture. This leads to a trust issue, maybe. We're talking here to an audience, people that are all consumers and users, maybe. So, what can you provide them with in order to better identify a trusty agent on the market and not someone that just is trying to be opportunistic? It is not an easy question. Yes, because we see people that who was selling computers and now are selling firewall systems. So how do you know that you can trust an actor on the market? So first of all, we try to really identify and select the partners we are working with. And to build trust, we are, in this ecosystem of cyber, we are really trying to find the right qualification and certifications in order to show that we are doing our job and that others also do think we are doing our job. So we ask others to come and check what we're doing. It's a bit the same as that goes for cars and Euro NCAP. Someone has tested your car for safety before. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to obtain as many certifications, as many qualifications as possible. And towards our partners, we are also offering training. Our partners, before they become a partner of ours, they have to go through onboarding and training to make sure that they have the skills needed to implement our systems. Because, let's face it, the worst case scenario would have to find someone implementing our solutions in a bad way. And then at the end of the day, our solutions would not be effective because of the bad implementation. And I will say that all our partners are great, but they are trained. They have engineers that have been trained to cybersecurity. They understand our product and they know exactly how to implement these products. So what you're saying basically is that if you need cybersecurity, you should go through a vendor who has certification qualifications. Exactly, labels are very important. There are several levels. You have the product level, you have the advisory level, the integration level, and at each level there are labels for qualification and certification. And ANSI also gives a list of identified experts, and I think you should use this list. It's not easy. You're facing a difficult situation with your SME, and so how do you deal with that? And I'm sorry. So, François, all these certification, qualification, are they prerequisites to the work of cybersecurity, or maybe some people abuse of these? I would not make any judgment on the compliance, but compliance is there to build trust. It gives better visibility to the good actors, and we do not lose too much time qualifying or giving certifications to people. The objective also is to organize audits following norms and standards that have been tested in order for all customers not to have to do this audit work with all their service providers. But for this to be efficient, you need standards. We've been talking about regulatory framework and laws. This is not coming from ISO, but you also have ISO standards. We're experts in that. And we have other use cases. But anyway, what's very interesting is that these standards come from the consensus of different countries. But the issue is that it comes from a consensus too, so it means that we will only have a compromise. It won't be the highest level of compliance. Why? We also have standards that are based on a framework, giving us the possibility to have compliance, showing that something has been tested or not. When we're talking about ISO 27, it just tells us what to do, not how to do it. This standards is quite easy, it's accessible, even for the people who do not want to get a certification, but at least you know the path you should follow, you know exactly what kind of leadership resources you need, and when it comes to certification, people will have to formalize exactly the threats and the different needs they have. That's where you will target exactly what you need and make the decision between the ready-to-wear or bespoke solutions, and this will optimize your resource use. In cybersecurity, is there a standard that is more recommended than another for any stakeholders? So is it interesting when someone says, I am complying with this standard? Well, we have ISO surveys in order to quantify the different certifications. In France, we had more than 900 last year. And this is something that is more and more asked during public procurements and so on. I've audited companies such as Orange and others, and so they've asked for certain requirements, but now we have new tools. When the market is asking for it, and when the clients are asking for these qualifications, these labels, it is just business, it's money, so you will do it. But there are different tools you could use. The thing is, you should not use too many tools or too many approaches that might not be compatible with each other. While you are already working on a topic of cybersecurity that is not very easy for you. There are so many standards. There are more standards than yogurts in the supermarket. So you might not have the time to go through all these standards. So you'd say that ISO 27 is the bare minimum. Well, my clients are very happy when they receive this certification, but I always tell them the same. Great, but now you have to keep it. And this is the most difficult part of it. And use it. But of course, you have to do continuous improvement. We want our clients to become autonomous. They have to keep working on cybersecurity. And at some point, they will call us back because there have been changes in the standards, or a company has been bought over by another one. But the idea is for these people to be able to really lead the work. This ISO standard is really the sandbox, the minimum level of inspection, of risk analysis, but many other tools can create cybersecurity. It's not the only tool on the table. And of course, we are also working with more sensitive companies, and they have created other qualifications, TPACs, for example. So, Gaëtan, you could also talk about the different certifications that might be reassuring towards the end users. All the qualifications we offer to our agencies. So just so I know that I am not going to the wrong market actor. Well, it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're starting the work on cybersecurity, I think that the ISO standard is enough. It's a great tool to already question your system and to start the path towards a great cybersecurity. Now, if you're asking for support on specific topics, I think that two qualifications are very important within our agency. It's TPACs and PASI. Why? Could you explain these two? What are these two qualifications? Well, it's for auditors and supporting actors. What's the matter? We want these companies, these service providers, to be compliant with our benchmark tool. Also, since they are represented on or listed on an agency website, it means that they have been tested. We know that these stakeholders are compliant, yes, but also they can go further than that. They're good. Now, if you want to go beyond this first step, you want to go and work in detection, we have a list of detection actors. If we're talking about other aspects, we also have lists on our website. But I think the first level for SMEs is really first the ISO standard and then the list we have on our website. Now, before we go to Q&A, this is passion in discussion and it goes quite fast. Now, for phase 2, many companies did not have to abide by the new regulation because it was operational framework, so they did not have to abide by this regulation and the new directive. And now, in the future, we will have small companies, some enterprises that might be working, for example, to create a small part of a plane. They will have to abide by the same level of compliance. The same level of compliance we expect from a very big sensitive group than for a small enterprise. So how will we impose this on such small companies? So first of all, when we're talking about SMEs, except in very specific cases of OIV SMEs, and that's very few, well, they are not to respect with this compliance level, but it's just about the contract they have with their clients. I'm not sure. I think the directive will change. We'll be discussing now groups that do provide a strategic or sensitive part. No, that's not right. If we're talking about sensitive parts, the agency is trying to propose to the decision makers to not involve the small agents and small actors in the directive. The question will be the same for all SMEs. If we're talking SME, first question is not to know if you have to abide by NIS2 or not. NIS2 is just about answering or responding to a threat. So the question is, would I be attacked or not? And as an SME, you don't really face the same threats. Now, this is new. I don't know how to do it. That's the second thought that might happen. Well, the directive have two levels. Essential, crucial entities, and then you have the second level that is just for important entities. And in the keynote we've heard yesterday, we are trying to create hygiene in terms of security. What does it mean? SMEs today have obligations. Even SMEs have obligations in terms of cybersecurity. We have the GDPR. Everybody has to abide by the GDPR as of today. And GDPR is also about cybersecurity, and this leads us to some questions. That doesn't mean that you don't have to respect any compliance rules. We all have to respect the basic standards, the basic compliance, and we have to insist on that with all the stakeholders. Moreover, with the specific SMEs. So we really want all companies to respect the basic measures. And these are rules. These are things that I already talk about when I do awareness raising to children of 8 years old. Well, thank you very much for all these great presentations, and I've asked to all of you to prepare a summary of the discussion, so I will give you 1 minute and that's it. So Lumina, what do you want to tell us about haute couture or ready-to-wear or, after the discussions of the day? So I would say that if you do not know the threats or risks within your company, this is the first question. Risk analysis. Everybody should implement risk analysis. This is the bare minimum. And everybody in this room should raise awareness. I'm just mentioning it. Everybody has to do awareness raising because we want digital hygiene. Digital measures in all tasks and professions. Once risk analysis has been done, you will decide if we're talking haute couture or ready to wear. That's the same for your clothes. You have both of them, and you just decide depending on the context. And this is the real question. You have to know exactly what you need and when to use it in order to implement the right human and financial resources. And so you can call upon Inclusive to ask for more information. Of course. We've been working on this, and I hope that we will be recognized as a public authority in the future, because we want to communicate on that beyond just this ecosystem. We are talking about our nation resilience. This depends on a collective work. We have to work together to go further. All companies can go and contact Inclusive. Yes, indeed, we have companies, members that are actors in the cybersecurity, but also users. And they're all at the same level, because at the end of the day, just sharing information and working together. Laurent? So I would end up with this sentence, alone I'm in despair, and together it's solace. I don't know if you've heard about this quote, but anyway, we've talked about the different organizations. Do not stay alone. That's my motto. And try to have a rational approach. I'm not asking for you to cover all risks and threats. Also, I don't think that you should bear the brunt of it. There's an article that has been published on the mental burden that represents cybersecurity. These professions are very difficult. So I would ask you to just raise awareness, to exchange, to discuss with your peers, and by doing so, you will understand better what you need to do. I am not there to convince you on what kind of solutions you want or you need. Everyone will make their own choices depending on the company they have and the needs and expectations. So just exchange, discuss, dialogue. This is how you will shape the way you think about it, and this is also how you will be able to bring to the table arguments. If the board is telling you this is too expensive, we cannot do that, this will give you evidence to share. François?
Security works when it's carried by the company, by the actors within the company, and as a result, if we don't know by which end to pick it up, if we have an approach that's maybe not made to measure, but at least specific, maybe not industrialized at least. And from that moment, the actors know whether to choose the people to assist them to find the solutions that they need. Once again, we get back to the need for security with regard to the threats that are present. And then you can propose something that's ready to wear or whatever is appropriate. Now, in certain cases, it's really, you have to be a little bit specific and really understand internally what you need that allows the SME to know where to find the proper solutions with this right level of security. And it's only what they need and not something that's superfluous. Now, ready-to-wear or a high street tailoring for an SME, well, it's very simple. When you try to secure things in your own home, you don't necessarily need to have the magic box that, or the safety box that you might have at the Bank of France. You might need a little sort of safe box that keeps a few jewels at home that might be safe. So. That's not a bad answer. It's true. I think the question, when you're an SME today, when you look at the complexity of the business environment and to keep your company alive and thriving, I think it's obviously your job is not to think about cybersecurity. What you have to do is, it's up to the specialists to provide all the expertise that they have, that we've learned as experts being in the high street tailoring environment, to offer something that might be ready to wear that will do the job. And I personally have never really bought high street, made to measure solutions for myself in my clothing, for example. And I use off the shelf, but I buy what I need. And our expertise is to provide the best. In terms of quality, the best cost-effective solution. Now, made in France, of course, whenever we can. Okay, so we have to change our way of thinking. We have to do a good analysis. We should not stay on our own. We should always get help when we need it. we always have something to secure and to have the right safe box for what we're going to put inside it. Is that a good word for conclusion? So thank you very much. Thank you much for all of you for being here. Now, thank you to all of you for your participation. So if you want to... So, to all of you, Sébastien, vous, System Shield, Laurent Petit, François, Sébastien, Gaëtan, Lumina, all of you, thank you very much. Are there any questions in the room? Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. You can come up to the speakers if you see them in the hallway. Feel free. No questions? Going once, going twice. I hope you've learned something in today's session. Thank you very much for your attention. My name is François Weber. It was a real honor for me to be here with you today and to host this roundtable. So thank you for your attention.